The Last Action Hero was the most painful flop of Arnold Schwarzenegger's entire career. It happened right at the moment when he was at the absolute peak of his fame. No one even considered the possibility that this movie could fail. And most likely it was that same confidence in guaranteed success that signed the film's box office death sentence. You can argue and say that death sentence sounds too harsh. The film eventually found its audience. Over the years, it became a cult classic loved by almost everyone. But back in the year it premiered, audiences rejected it outright. To this day, it is still considered one of Arnold's defining failures, and you can easily see that in critics' reviews and viewer ratings across film sites. Schwarzenegger himself admits in every interview that the blame for the flop lies mostly on him, with one small nuance. And that nuance is what we are talking about today. The truth is that The Last Action Hero was the first movie in which Arnold controlled absolutely every stage of production and pushed his suggestions into every department. And because his star power in the early 90s was one of the brightest in Hollywood, the studio gave him complete freedom. Schwarzenegger personally approved the script, cast, director, producers, cinematographer, and even the composer. After The Last Action Hero, he never again tried to act as a one-man production machine. Most of the criticism lands on Arnold because he forced the script to be radically changed. At that time, he was convinced that audiences loved him most in comedic and family-friendly roles. The reason was the huge success of the film twins. After that, Arnold kept searching for comedic projects wherever he could find them. That is how movies like Kindergarten Cop, Junior, and Jingle All the Way appeared. And that same mindset crushed the original script of The Last Action Hero. Something similar happened with Dwayne Johnson. He kept acting in family movies for years until one day he lost his temper, fired all his agents, and said their contracts nearly destroyed his career. That was during the era of Witch Mountain, Tooth Fairy, and The Game Plan. Originally, The Last Action Hero was supposed to be very different from what we received. The script by Zach Penn and Adam Leff was much darker. The kid, Danny Madigan, was not a middle schooler but a high school senior. Meaning we were supposed to get a typical Hollywood teenager of 17, played by a guy who is 25. You can imagine how different the tone and dialogue would be. But as soon as Arnold joined the project, he immediately assigned Shane Black to rewrite the script and ordered him to make the story more family-friendly. While Shane Black was turning the screenplay into a comedy, Arnold approached Steven Spielberg and Robert Zemeckis to direct the film. Both were famous for making family-oriented blockbusters. Both rejected the offer. Only after their refusal did Schwarzenegger turn to his friend John McTiernan, with whom he had just worked on Predator. But even Shane Black's rewrite did not seem family-friendly enough for Arnold, so William Goldman was brought in to make even more changes. And that is how the animated cat entered the script. The film that was supposed to be titled Extreme Violence transformed into The Last Action Hero. The brutal R-rated action story about a John McClane-style character entering the real world turned into a PG-13 family adventure that chopped away hundreds of lines of profanity. You cannot say the new script was entirely worse. Some fun ideas, like Medieval Arnold, came from the rewrites. But everyone can imagine how much potential was thrown out because of the PG-13 restrictions. Filming itself went smoothly. This movie was planned as the main summer blockbuster, so the studio spared no expense. When Arnold and McTiernan decided to shoot Jack Slater's premiere in the middle of Times Square, the studio managed to get permission to shut down the most tourist-heavy place in New York City for an entire week. But the result of all this creative control was disastrous test screenings. Most of the audience hated the film. And here we reach the nuance mentioned earlier. The film needed expensive reshoots to fix the problems. The studio, which up till that moment had supported Arnold in everything, refused to pay for additional shooting. Maybe the executives decided that the movie was beyond saving, and another $20 or $30 million would be wasted. Or maybe they believed Arnold's star power would save the movie no matter what. In theory, that would have happened, but Jurassic Park came out 1 week before the premiere. Spielberg's film obliterated the box office and shattered several records, and The Last Action Hero was crushed beneath it. In the United States, the movie earned only $50 million with a budget of $90. For Arnold in the early 90s, this was a complete disaster. Jurassic Park gave everyone a convenient excuse to blame the studio for refusing to move the release date. But when people talk about that, they forget that the filmmakers originally asked not only for a release date change, but also for millions of dollars for reshoots. And nobody predicted that Jurassic Park would perform with such insane power. Yes, Spielberg's dinosaurs definitely hurt The Last Action Hero, but that was only half the problem. The film was also attacked by negative reviews from critics and audiences. It was criticized for being too childish and packed with cliches. You can argue that the childish tone complaint has some logic, but the accusations of cliché from so-called professional critics make absolutely no sense. Almost all of those moments were intentionally written as satire. Criticizing them as cliches is only possible if someone failed to understand that the movie was making fun of the genre. Some critics even complained about the famous scene with the paper cutout, claiming it looked stupid and unrealistic. Seriously? And yet, despite all this, The Last Action Hero remains an excellent film. Yes, it is family-friendly, but that does not make it worse. It simply became a different movie than originally planned. It might be a bit sad that Arnold abandoned the original idea of a brutal, R-rated action film in favor of fantasy, but in the end, we got a unique movie with no real equivalents. That was FRAMEBACK. See you on the next Rewind.